Claws, teeth, and acid spittle ripped into human flesh as the venomous Thaxcar alien beast tore ravenously at Harry's leg in a dense bioluminescent jungle. On a death world full of horrors, stranded light years from home, humans fought to survive among the galaxy's apex predators. Harry Reyes's eyes snapped open, his face pressed into the dirt and decaying mulch of the alien jungle floor. Searing pain shot through his body as he tried to move his mangled right leg, shredded to the bone by the Thaxacar's brutal assault. Two suns hung in the strange sky overhead, casting an eerie red glow across the massive trees and luminous foliage. In the distance, guttural roars and shrill screeches reverberated through the air. Harry tried to remember how he ended up on this hellish alien planet. Flashes of an explosion on his ship, the UTS Odyssey, burst through the haze clouding his mind. He had been on a routine scouting mission near the edge of human-controlled space when everything went sideways. Rolling onto his side, stomach churning from the stench of his own blood pooling on the ground, Harry examined his damaged equipment. His railgun was cracked in half, and his emergency beacon lay in pieces around him, destroyed in the hard impact of the crash landing. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Sergeant Harry Reyes of the UTS Odyssey. Does anyone copy?" Harry croaked into his short-range comms. Static crackled in response. Another thunderous roar echoed from the jungle around him, closer this time. Harry propped himself up on his elbows and dragged himself towards the twisted scraps of his escape pod scattered across the clearing, ignoring the white-hot agony screaming from his mutilated leg. The bushes at the far end of the clearing exploded outwards as another massive Thaxcar burst through. 6 armored legs propelled the beast forward at terrifying speed, its serrated mandibles already dripping with viscous green venom as it charged. Harry fumbled for his sidearm with shaking fingers, his vision blurred by blood loss and pain. He drew the compact railgun pistol and fired frantically at the oncoming alien juggernaut, the high-velocity rounds pinging harmlessly off its tank-like exoskeleton. He rolled desperately to one side as the Thaxcar lunged, its razor jaws snapping shut inches from his head with bone-crushing force. Harry scrambled backwards, firing shot after shot at the creature's eyes and underbelly to no effect. Darkness crept in at the edges of Harry's vision as the bloodthirsty alien monster readied for another attack. Alone on an uncharted planet, countless light years beyond any hope of rescue, he faced the horrifying realization that humanity was very far from the apex predators here. To survive, he would have to dig deeper than ever before and tap into the primal human will to live, rekindling the indomitable spirit that had raised his species from cave-dwelling primitives on ancient Earth to conquerors of the stars. But even then, all alone, stranded on an alien death world and surrounded by nightmarish monsters, Harry wasn't sure it would be enough to keep him alive until sunrise. His mangled leg screamed in protest, but Harry pushed through the pain. The Thaxcar roared and thundered after him. He felt its putrid breath on the back of his neck as he ducked into the cave. The creature's jaws snapped shut inches from his back. Harry stumbled deeper into the cave, the pulsing light growing brighter. He froze as he turned a corner and saw the source, a damaged, teardrop-shaped escape pod embedded in the cave wall. Unfamiliar glyphs marked its iridescent metal surface. Harry limped closer. Through the cracked viewport, he could make out a figure slumped over the controls, wearing a form-fitting suit that shimmered in the dim light. Whoever they weren't moving. With a grunt of effort, Harry pried open the damaged hatch. Up close, he could see a deep gash across the figure's chest, dark blood staining their suit. He dragged them out as gently as he could and laid them on the cave floor. It was a male with pale blue skin and strange ridges along his skull. His breathing was shallow. Harry dug through his pockets and pulled out his meager med kit. He had no idea if human medicine would work on this alien, but he had to try. He couldn't survive this hellish planet alone. As he sprayed coagulant foam into the wound and applied a pressure bandage, the alien's eyes fluttered open. Glowing yellow irises stared up at Harry in confusion and fear. The creature made a series of clicking noises and tried to scramble away. "Whoa, easy," Harry said, holding up his empty hands. "I'm not going to hurt you, I want to help." The alien stared at him for a long moment, then slowly relaxed. It pointed to itself and made another string of clicks that sounded vaguely like Karos. "Karos?" Harry repeated, pointing at the alien. It nodded. Harry tapped his own chest. "Harry!" Karos struggled to sit up, wincing. He gestured at his wound, then at Harry, and bowed his head, a clear expression of gratitude. Harry helped him lean against the cave wall and tried to ask what had happened, but the language barrier made it nearly impossible. Through a frustrating combination of gestures, simple words, and stick-figure drawings scraped in the dirt, he pieced together that Karos was some kind of scout. His people called this world Zaxthar, the DeathWorld. It was infamous for its lethal weather and creatures so dangerous that most spacefarers avoided it at all costs. Karos had been sent to see if it was possible to build some kind of research post here, but his ship had been attacked by a swarm of flying horrors, sending him crashing to the surface. Harry shared his own story, explaining how he'd ended up stranded as well. As the twin suns began to set outside the cave, casting long shadows across the jungle, the two castaways looked at each other. They were from different worlds, different cultures, maybe even different ends of the galaxy. But here, on this nightmare planet, none of that mattered. They would have to work together to survive, to find a way off Zaxthar before it killed them both. As the twin suns rose over the jagged peaks of Zaxthar, Harry and Karos set out from the cave to explore their surroundings. They needed resources to survive until the Komar rescue ship arrived. Food, water, and materials to reinforce their shelter against the planet's vicious predators. Karos led the way, his keen senses attuned to the alien environment. Harry followed close behind, his injured leg still painful but holding up thanks to the Komar's medical expertise. They hiked through dense jungles and across rocky plateaus, always on the lookout for danger. On the third day of their exploration, they stumbled upon something unexpected, a hidden Zorgon research facility built into a cliffside. The entrance was overgrown with bioluminescent vines, but the unmistakable glint of metal shone through. Karos clicked his agreement. They approached cautiously, plasma rifles at the ready. Inside, the facility was in disarray, equipment overturned, supplies scattered across the floor. It looked like the Zorgons had left in a hurry. As they picked their way through the debris, Harry spotted a central computer terminal that was still operational. He hacked into the system, his fingers flying over the alien controls. "I'm in," he said after a moment. "Let's see what the Zorgons were up to here." Data flashed across the screen. Schematics, research logs, geological surveys. Harry's eyes widened as he scanned the information. They were studying some kind of rare crystal. Zaxthar crystals, he said, glancing at Karos. Apparently they have incredible energy potential. The Zorgons think they could revolutionize power production across the galaxy. Karos leaned in, studying the data. He pointed to a flashing warning signal, clicking urgently. "The crystals are unstable," Harry read, his brow furrowing. "The Zorgons' mining operations have destabilized the planet's core. That's why the weather's been going crazy, why there's so much seismic activity." He sat back, stunned. The Zorgons' greed had put the entire planet at risk, and now he and Karos were caught in the middle of it. Suddenly an alarm blared through the facility. Harry jumped to his feet as a robotic voice echoed through the halls. "Intruder alert. Security drones activated." Karos grabbed his rifle, clicking urgently. Harry nodded, adrenaline already surging through his veins. A swarm of sleek, deadly drones poured into the room, laser cannons firing. Harry and Karos dove for cover, blasting back with their plasma rifles, the air filled with the sizzle of energy weapons and the acrid smell of burning metal. Harry rolled behind an overturned table, popping up to take shots at the drones. Beside him, Karos let out a burst of covering fire, his aim precise and lethal. They fought their way through the facility, corridor by smoke-filled corridor. Harry hacked door controls and rewired power junctions, using every scrap of his technical expertise to give them an edge. Karos's raw combat prowess was incredible to behold, as he tore into the drones with ruthless efficiency. In a rare moment of respite between firefights, Karos turned to Harry, clicking softly. There was a new respect in his glowing yellow eyes, a recognition of the human's quick thinking and adaptability under pressure. Harry grinned back, feeling a surge of camaraderie. They might be from different worlds, but here on Zaxthar they were brothers in arms. The ground shook beneath their feet as they battled on, a reminder of the impending catastrophe that threatened the planet. Harry knew their fight was far from over, but with Karos by his side, he was ready to face whatever this hellish world threw at them next. As the last of the Zorgon drones fell in a shower of sparks, Harry lowered his plasma rifle and turned to Karos. "Nice shooting." Karos clicked his mandibles in acknowledgement, his yellow eyes scanning the hangar bay. He gestured towards a sleek, angular craft nestled in the far corner. "There." They approached the Zorgon shuttlecraft cautiously, Harry's fingers tightening on his weapon. Up close, he could see the advanced tech woven into its gleaming hull, energy shielding, pulse cannons, thruster pods. "Jackpot," he muttered. Karos placed a clawed hand on the shuttle's access panel. With a hiss, the hatch slid open. They stepped inside, sinking into the form-fitting seats. Harry ran his hands over the controls, his eyes widening as he took in the alien interface. "I think I can fly this. It's not too different from—" A deep, resonant voice filled his mind, interrupting his thoughts. "Humans, Koma. You do not belong here." Harry jerked upright, adrenaline spiking. Beside him, Karos went rigid, his eyes wide. "I am the verdant behemoth," the creature said, its telepathic voice echoing in their minds. "The guardian of Zaxthar. For eons I have maintained the balance, until the Zorgons came." Images flashed through Harry's mind, Zorgon miners ripping glowing crystals from the earth, the planet's core pulsing with unstable energy, creatures mutating and ecosystems unraveling. "The Zaxthar crystals are the heart of this world," the behemoth said. "The Zorgon's greed has poisoned the land, corrupted its creatures. If the crystals are not restored, Zaxthar will tear itself apart." The creature's massive head dipped low, luminous sap dripping from its mouthparts. "You will help restore the balance, destroy the Zorgon machines, seal the crystal caves. Do this, and I will guide you safely to your ship. Refuse, and the jungle will consume you." Harry glanced at Karos, seeing his own shock reflected in the Komar's face. Working with a giant telepathic plant hadn't been part of the plan, but what choice did they have? Harry turned back to the shuttle controls, his fingers flying over the console. The engines hummed to life, the hull vibrating with barely restrained power. "All right, let's see what this baby can do." The shuttle lifted off, gliding out of the hangar and into Zaxthar's crimson sky. Following the behemoth's psychic directions, they angled towards the distant mountains, towards the Zorgon mining facility. As they flew, Harry glanced over at Karos. The Komar's eyes were fixed on the horizon, his clawed hands gripping the weapon controls. In the short time they'd known each other, Harry had seen Karos face down horrors that would break most men without flinching. Whatever waited for them at that mine, he knew the alien would be right beside him, fighting to the last. The shuttle's sensors pinged as they approached the mining site. The mountain ahead glowed with eerie pulsing light, the Zaxthar crystal's energy signature unmistakable. Massive machines clung to its slopes, drills and excavators gouging deep into the earth. "I'm picking up multiple defense turrets," Harry said, his eyes on the scanner, "and a lot of movement in the tunnels. Looks like the Zorgons aren't going down without a fight." Harry grinned. The Komar's bloodthirsty enthusiasm was starting to rub off on him. He angled the shuttle into a dive, aiming for the largest cluster of turrets. "Weapons hot. Let's give 'em hell." They came in low and fast, the shuttle's pulse cannons spitting blue-white fire. Explosions bloomed across the mountains as the Zorgon defenses crumpled under the onslaught. A swarm of attack drones boiled out of hidden hangars, filling the sky with darting, metallic shapes. Harry jinked and wove, the shuttle responding like an extension of his body. Beside him, Karos rained plasma bolts into the swarm, his aim flawless. They danced a deadly ballet through the sky, the shuttle's shields flaring as enemy fire hammered against them. The ground below was cratered and smoking, littered with the wreckage of Zorgon machines. A colossal machine squatted at the heart of the mining complex, a monstrous drill grinding into the mountainside, glowing crystals spilled from the wound in the earth, pulsing with unstable energy. Harry wrenched the shuttle into a sharp turn, diving towards the drill. Warning alarms blared as its defense grid locked on, energy cannons swiveling to track them. 50 credits says I can take it out in one shot, Harry said, his finger hovering over the trigger. Harry lined up the shot, the drill looming large in his sights. He could feel the weight of the moment, the fate of an entire world resting on his shoulders. But then, when had the stakes ever been less for a Reyes? He squeezed the trigger, and the universe exploded in light and fire. The shuttle shuddered as Harry pulled back on the control stick, rising from the shattered remains of the Zorgon drill. Scorched metal and smouldering debris rained down the mountainside. Karos let out a triumphant roar, pumping his fist. "That's how a Reyes gets it done," Harry shouted over the din of warning alarms. He silenced them with a few quick taps on the console. "Let's get out of here before the whole place comes down on our heads." They rocketed away from the ruined mining complex, angling back towards the verdant behemoth's valley. As they flew, Harry could feel the planet itself seeming to sigh with relief, as if a great weight had been lifted from its shoulders. They set the shuttle down at the edge of the valley. The behemoth was waiting for them, its massive form dominating the landscape. Harry and Karos approached, the human limping slightly from his injured leg. "It is done," the behemoth's voice echoed in their minds. "The balance has been restored. You have the gratitude of Zaxthar." Glowing sap dripped from its mouthparts, splattering on the soil at their feet. Where it fell, lush vegetation immediately sprung forth, vibrant flowers unfurling their petals. The creature extended a vine towards them. Clutched in its tendril was a crystalline device, pulsing with inner light. "This is a map to the oasis of Zil. There, you may rest and gather your strength before your journey home." Harry took the map with a nod of thanks. The behemoth retreated into the jungle, its form quickly vanishing among the twisting foliage. "I guess that's as close to a thank you as we're going to get," Harry said, examining the map. Karos chattered in agreement. Following the map, they flew the shuttle to the coordinates indicated. What they found took their breath away. Nestled amid the rugged peaks was a lush valley, hidden away from the deadly jungles. Waterfalls cascaded down cliffs into crystal-clear pools. Bioluminescent plants cast a soft glow across the scene. Strange, shimmering fish darted through the waters. "I could get used to a view like this," Harry said as they disembarked from the shuttle. Karos clicked his approval. They spent the next day resting and recovering in the peaceful sanctuary. Harry tended to his injured leg, while Karos foraged for food, putting his knowledge of xenobotany to good use. For the first time since crash landing on this hellish planet, Harry allowed himself a moment to breathe, to believe that they might actually make it out of this alive. On the morning of the second day, as they were packing up to leave, a sound from the jungle's edge caught their attention. Harry grabbed his sidearm, falling into a combat stance. Karos hefted his rifle. A figure emerged from the foliage, a humanoid, but not like any Harry had seen before. They were short and lean, with mottled green and brown skin that seemed to shift and change, blending with the jungle behind them. They wore simple garments woven from plant fibers and carried primitive spears and knives of chipped stone. The being approached cautiously, making a complex series of gestures with its hands. More figures emerged from the jungle behind it, all eyeing the shuttle and the off-worlders with wary curiosity. "The Zaxthari," Karos said softly. "I thought they were only legend." Harry lowered his weapon and stepped forward, hands raised to show he meant no harm. He pointed to himself and then to Karos. "I'm Harry. This is Karos. We're not a threat." The leader of the Zaxthari cocked its head, as if listening to something Harry couldn't hear. Then, to his surprise, it gestured for them to follow before melting back into the jungle. They trekked deep into the jungle, Harry's suit automatically adjusting to the oppressive heat and humidity. He marveled at the way the Zaxthari moved through the dense undergrowth, leaving hardly a trace of their passing. After several hours, they emerged into a hidden village, primitive huts woven from living trees and vines. The entire Zaxthari tribe was waiting for them, watching with guarded curiosity. Harry stepped forward and bowed deeply, showing respect in the way he had learned from his xenoanthropology classes at the academy. "Thank you for welcoming us to your village. We are honored." The leader of the Zaxthari, an aged figure with a headdress of glowing fronds, stepped forward. It placed a scaled hand on Harry's chest, over his heart. Its mouth moved, and while he couldn't understand the words, their meaning resonated in his mind. "Welcome, traveler from beyond the stars. The jungle has spoken of your deeds." Over the next few days, as they waited for the Komar ship to arrive, Harry and Karos found themselves being drawn into the daily life of the village. The Zaxthari were eager to learn about the worlds beyond their skies, and in turn shared their own deep knowledge of the planet's secrets. They taught Harry and Karos which plants could heal and which could kill, how to read the subtle signs of the jungle, to sense the approach of a Thaxkar or a storm. In the evenings, around the flickering bioluminescence of the central fire pit, the elders shared ancient stories of the behemoths and the sacred duty of the Zaxthari to protect the jungle's heart. Harry, in turn, shared stories of distant Earth, of towering cities and vast oceans. He shared what technology he could to help the Zaxthari defend against the planet's predators, stronger alloys for their spears, a sonic emitter to ward off the Thaxkar. The village leader thanked him with tears in its eyes, calling him Nokthar, jungle friend. On the final night before the Komar ship was due to arrive, the leader took Harry and Karos to a hidden cave deep within the mountain. There, bathed in pulsing bioluminescence, was a natural shrine to the Zaxthar crystals. Raw, uncut gems the size of a human head protruded from the walls, thrumming with barely contained energy. Harry could feel their power washing over him, raising the hairs on his arms. He understood now why the Zorgans had been so desperate to claim them, and why they could never be allowed to. As the twin suns rose on the final day, the Zaxthari gathered to bid their farewells. They draped Harry and Karos in garlands of glowing flowers and pressed gifts into their hands, medicinal herbs, crystals carved with intricate runes, a beautifully woven cloak for each of them. Harry clasped forearms with the leader, emotions thick in his throat. "I'll never forget what you've done for us," he said roughly. "I'll make sure the Alliance knows that the Zaxthari are under our protection." With a final wave, Harry and Karos boarded the shuttle and lifted off, angling towards the landing site where the Komar ship would soon arrive. But as they crested the ridge, a plasma bolt slammed into their shields, alarms shrieking. A squadron of Zorgon fighters rose from the jungle below, cannons blazing. "Looks like the Zorgons held a grudge," Harry snarled, wrenching the shuttle into evasive maneuvers. Karos was already charging the weapons, a predatory glint in his eyes. The shuttle jinked and dodged, Harry pushing its inertial dampeners to their limits. The Zorgon ships were fast and heavily armed, but the shuttle was nimble. He threaded between cannon fire spinning and rolling as Karos rained blue-white plasma into the enemy formation. One by one the Zorgon fighters fell, blasted into incandescent debris, but there were too many, an endless swarm pouring from hidden bases. Alarms shrilled as the shuttle's shields drained, its hull blistering under the onslaught. Harry gritted his teeth, sweat pooling in his jumpsuit. This couldn't be how it ended, not when they had fought so hard and come so far. He pictured the Zaxthari children laughing as they played with the toys he had fashioned them, Karos's eyes glowing as he pored over Zaxthari star charts by firelight. He pictured Layla back on Earth, waiting for a brother who might never return. "No," he growled, "not like this, not today." He slapped the controls, diverting power from the failing shields into the engines. The shuttle surged forward, accelerating into a suicidal head-on charge against the Zorgon flagship. "Harry!" Karos shouted in alarm, but there was no time to explain. At the last second, Harry wrenched the controls to the side. The shuttle skimmed past the flagship's bridge with meters to spare, so close he could see the startled expressions of the Zorgon command crew. And as they passed, Karos fired a full salvo directly into the flagship's exposed reactor core. The explosion was blinding, a miniature supernova that atomized the flagship instantly. The EMP blast washed over the remaining Zorgon ships, shorting out their systems, leaving them drifting and helpless. The shuttle, its systems hardened against such pulses, burst free of the fireball, scorched and battered but alive. Harry let out a whoop of sheer exhilaration, echoed by Karos's roar of victory. Against all odds they had done it. They had survived. That new shape emerged from the swirling debris clouds. Sleek, shimmering, elegant. The Komar rescue ship finally arrived. As it drew alongside the shuttle, Harry felt a wave of relief so strong it was almost dizzying. But even as he guided the shuttle into the Komar ship's docking bay, Harry knew a part of him would always remain here on Zaxthar. In the humid jungles and bioluminescent caves, in the ancient songs of the Zaxthari and the ageless wisdom of the verdant behemoths. This planet of wonders and horrors had changed him, forged him into something new, and he would carry that change with him no matter where the stars led him next. Harry's fingers danced across the shuttle's controls as he wove through the barrage of Zorgon plasma fire. Karos manned the weapons console, his claws a blur as he targeted the enemy ships with pinpoint accuracy. "I'm picking up a transmission from orbit," Karos clicked urgently. "It's the Komar rescue ship." Harry gritted his teeth as the shuttle shuddered under another impact. "We'll find a way to clear the LZ. Just be ready to swoop in and get us the hell off this rock." "Understood," defiant out. Karos's eyes narrowed, then they widened. "The crystals from the Zaxthari village. We could use them." Harry followed his train of thought. "Draw the Zorgons in, then blow the crystals, bury them in the canyon." He grinned fiercely. "I like it." They turned the shuttle towards the village, Harry flying low and fast over the jungle canopy. The Zaxthari scattered in alarm as they landed, but relaxed as they recognized Harry and Karos. "Friends," Harry called out as they disembarked, "we need your help. The sky demons are upon us." The Zaxthari elder approached, his eyes grave. He gestured to one of the huts. Inside, a cluster of Zaxthar crystals pulsed with inner light. Harry and Karos loaded the crystals into the shuttle with reverent care. As they lifted off again, the elder raised a clawed hand in farewell. "May the jungle guide your path, Nokthar." They rocketed towards the nearby canyon, the Zorgon ships in hot pursuit. Harry threaded the shuttle through the narrow gorge, stone walls blurring past on either side. "Get ready," he called over his shoulder. "We'll only have one shot at this." Karos grunted acknowledgement, his claw hovering over the detonator. As the canyon narrowed to a choke point ahead, Harry sent the shuttle into a climb. The Zorgon ships, sensing a trap, tried to pull up. Too late, Karos hit the detonator. The Zaxthar crystals, nestled at the base of the canyon walls, exploded with the force of a small sun. The gorge collapsed in on itself, millions of tons of rock crashing down on the Zorgon ships. Their hulls crumpled like tin cans under the onslaught, vanishing beneath the rubble. Silence fell, broken only by the tinkle of settling stone. Harry let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That's one way to take out the trash." Karos chuffed a laugh. Then his eyes widened at something on the scanner. "The Defiant, they're coming in for a landing." Harry angled the shuttle back towards the LZ, a fierce grin spreading across his face. They set down just as the Defiant landed with a roar of thrusters, the Komar rescue team pouring out with weapons ready. Harry and Karos stumbled out to meet them, battered and bloody but triumphant. As the Defiant lifted off again, medtechs fussing over the injured duo, Harry looked out the viewport at the receding shape of Zaxthar below. The planet looked different now, the roiling storm clouds dissipating, the eerie red light fading to a softer green. As they watched, a massive shape emerged from the jungle, the verdant behemoth. It raised sinuous tendrils to the sky, and all around it, new growth burst from the earth, the jungle surging back to vibrant life. Zaxthar was healing. Against all odds, they had made a difference. As the Komar ship carried them away to an uncertain future, Harry knew one thing for certain: Zaxthar and the trials they had endured there would be a part of them forever. The lights of the medbay seemed too bright after the primal shadows of the jungle. Harry squinted against the glare as Karos laid a clawed hand on his shoulder. "What now, jungle friend?" the Komar asked. "Where will your path take you?" Harry thought of Earth, of Lunar Colony, of his sister Layla waiting for a brother she thought long dead. He thought of the Zaxthari and their simple, harmonious way of life, of the wonders and horrors the galaxy had to offer. He met Karos's eyes, saw the same fire there that he felt kindling in his own heart, the same restless urge to see what lay beyond the next star, to push the boundaries of the possible. "I don't know," Harry said honestly, "but whatever's out there, I aim to meet it head-on. There's a whole galaxy waiting to be explored." Karos grinned fiercely. "Then perhaps our paths will cross again. The stars are wide and life is long." Harry clasped Karos's forearm in the warrior's grip of the Komar. "I hope they do, my friend, I hope they do." He leaned back against the medbay bulkhead, his eyes drifting closed as exhaustion finally claimed him. But even as he slipped into dreamless sleep, he knew his journey was far from over. Harry sat up gingerly, taking stock. His wounds had been tended to, the gashes from the Thaxkar's claws now sealed with synthetic skin. "Better, thanks to your medics." Zaxthar inclined his head. "Your actions on Zaxthar were nothing short of heroic. You and Karos saved not only each other, but an entire planet's ecosystem." Harry shook his head. "We did what we had to. Couldn't just stand by and watch the Zorgans destroy everything in their greed." "The Komar High Council has taken notice," Zaxthar continued. "They wish to establish formal relations with your species. You've proven that humans can be valuable allies." Harry's eyebrows shot up. Humanity, barely more than a blip on the galactic stage, catching the attention of an advanced race like the Komar. It was a dizzying prospect. As if sensing his thoughts, Zaxthar chuckled. "You underestimate your own potential, Harry Reyes. The galaxy is vast, and there is much we can learn from one another." A chime sounded, and the medbay door slid open. Karos strode in, his wounds also tended to. He clasped forearms with Harry in the warrior's grip. Over the next several days, as the Komar ship hurtled through hyperspace towards Komar space, Harry and Karos spent long hours in conversation. They spoke of their respective worlds, their histories and cultures. He described how the Komar had been forced to adapt, to develop advanced eco-friendly technologies to survive, terraforming techniques to revitalize barren wastelands, sustainable energy sources harnessing the power of stars, recycling systems that turned waste into raw materials. "We learned the hard way that we are not separate from our world, but a part of it," Karos said. "That we must live in harmony with our environment, not seek to dominate it." Harry nodded, thinking of Earth, of the scars left by centuries of war and environmental destruction, only now beginning to heal. He told Karos of humanity's first tentative steps into the stars, of the challenges faced by early colonists on hostile worlds. "We had to be resourceful, adaptable," Harry said. "Had to learn to make do with what we had, to turn disadvantages into strengths." He spoke of the ingenuity and determination that had allowed humans to tame alien frontiers, to carve homes and cities from the unforgiving void, of the indomitable spirit that had carried them from their cradle on Earth to the far reaches of the galaxy. Karos listened intently, his respect for his human comrade growing with each tale. He saw in Harry the same qualities that had allowed the Komar to overcome their own challenges: resilience, innovation, a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. An urgent ping from the ship's comm system interrupted their conversation. Captain Zaxela's voice crackled over the speakers, tense with concern. "All hands, we are diverting to respond to a distress call from a nearby system. A Komar research vessel is under attack by unknown hostiles. Prepare for potential combat. Harry and Karos exchanged a glance, the camaraderie of the past few days crystallizing into the bond of warriors preparing for battle. They rose as one, ready to face whatever threat awaited them. The Komar ship dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the system, sensors straining to locate the beleaguered research vessel. It wasn't hard to find. The ship hung in space, its hull breached in a dozen places, atmosphere venting from gaping wounds. Debris and bodies drifted in a macabre halo around it. Scans detect multiple non-Komar life signs aboard the vessel, a bridge officer reported, her voice tight. The researchers are still alive, but they won't be for long. Ready a boarding team, Captain Zaxler ordered. We need to extract our people before... Sir, another officer interrupted. Unknown ships decloaking off our starboard bow. They're moving to intercept. On the view screen, a dozen angular ships shimmered into existence, their hulls chitinous and glistening with a sickly sheen. They swarmed towards the Komar ship like angry hornets. Crackstar, Zaxlar spat, the name dripping with revulsion. An insectoid race known for their aggression and their advanced cloaking technology. They must be after the research team. Harry and Karos were already moving, sprinting towards the armory. They suited up swiftly, checking weapons and gear with the ease of long practice. Harry nodded grimly, the weight of his plasma rifle reassuring in his hands. The shuttle shuddered as it launched, the Komar ship providing covering fire as they raced towards the crippled research vessel. They docked with a jarring clang, the shuttle's hatch sealing tight against the vessel's rent hull. Harry and Karos were the first ones out, moving in practiced unison as they secured the airlock. The interior of the ship was a nightmare. Emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the twisted corridors. The walls were streaked with scorch marks and viscous green blood. In the distance, they could hear the chitter and skitter of Crackstar movements, the screams of Komar researchers. We need to find the survivors, Harry said, his voice muffled by his helmet. And the prototype. We can't let the Crackstar get their claws on Zaxthar crystal technology. They moved deeper into the ship, following the sounds of combat. They found the first Crackstar in a shattered laboratory, hunched over the eviscerated body of a Komar scientist. The creature whirled to face them, mandibles clicking, compound eyes glittering with malevolent intelligence. Harry fired, his plasma bolt catching the Crackstar in its chitinous thorax. It screeched, ichor spraying as it charged forward on skittering legs. Karos was there to meet it, his vibroblade shearing through the creature's exoskeleton to the pulsing flesh beneath. More Crackstar boiled out of the shadows, a seething tide of claws and fangs. Harry and Karos fought back to back, plasma bolts and shimmering steel weaving a deadly web. They pushed forward, inch by blood-soaked inch, towards the heart of the vessel. They found the surviving researchers barricaded in the engine room, huddled around a pulsing crystalline device. The prototype, its Zaxthar crystals glowing with an inner fire. The Komar looked up as Harry and Karos burst in, hope and fear warring on their faces. "We're here to get you out," Harry said, scanning the room for threats. "But we need to move fast. The Crackstar won't be far behind." One of the researchers, an elderly Komar with a bloodied lab coat, stepped forward. "The prototype," he said, his voice shaking. "We can't let them have it. Its potential as an energy source is immense, but in the wrong hands." He trailed off, the implications clear. Harry and Karos exchanged a glance. They knew all too well the destruction that advanced technology could wreak in the hands of the greedy or the cruel. "We'll keep it safe," Karos promised, "but we need to go now." They formed up around the researchers, Harry and Karos taking point. They retraced their steps through the ship's ravaged corridors, the chitter of Crackstar always at their heels. They were almost to the airlock when the wave hit. Crackstar poured from every vent and shadow, a chittering tide of chitin and hate. Harry and Karos opened fire, plasma bolts ripping into the swarm. But for every insectoid that fell, two more surged forward to take its place. "Go!" Harry shouted to the researchers, shoving them towards the airlock. "Get to the shuttle." He and Karos formed a rearguard, a living wall of steel and fire. They bought the researchers precious seconds to scramble aboard the shuttle, but the Kraxtar were relentless, heedless of their losses. They fell back step by step, the snarling tide pushing them inexorably back towards the airlock. The shuttle's engines flared to life behind them, the researchers motioning frantically for them to board. But the Kraxtar were too many, the distance too great. Harry and Karos shared one last glance, a wordless moment of perfect understanding. They had fought together, bled together. They would die together, buying time for the others to escape. Harry thumbed his rifle to full auto, the barrel glowing white-hot. Karos raised his vibroblade, the edge humming with deadly energy. They charged forward into the chittering horde, a defiant roar on their lips, ready to sell their lives dearly to protect those in their care. The swarm engulfed them, claws and fangs and hate, the tide rising to claim them. In that last moment, as darkness closed in, Harry's thoughts were of Earth, of blue skies and green fields, of a future he would never see, but that he had fought to protect. Then the world dissolved into fire and blood and searing light, and he knew no more. Harry and Karos burst into the research vessel's central lab, plasma rifles blazing. The Kraxtar warriors chittered in surprise, then returned fire with their own crackling energy weapons. Karos dove for cover behind an overturned lab bench as sizzling bolts scorched the air above his head. "Dr. Zaxmore," he shouted over the din of battle, "we must get you and the prototype to safety." The elderly Komar researcher lay slumped against the far wall, his white lab coat stained crimson. He clutched a shimmering crystalline device to his chest, the Zaxthar crystal prototype. "No," Zaxmore gasped. "The device, damaged in the attack, unstable, cannot be moved." Harry gritted his teeth, blasting a charging Kraxtar warrior off its feet. The insectoid soldier crashed into a bank of sparking computers and lay still. "We can't leave it here," he called to Karos. "If the Kraxtar get their claws on that tech—" Karos nodded grimly. "Agreed, Doctor, we—" A guttural roar interrupted him. A massive Kraxtar warrior surged into the lab, his chitin armor adorned with glowing sigils. "I am Kraxvol," the creature snarled. "The device. Give it to me, and I may let you live." Harry and Karos opened fire in unison, plasma bolts slamming into Kraxvol's armor. The Kraxtar commander staggered but didn't fall, his mandibles clacking in cruel laughter. More warriors poured into the lab behind him, energy weapons humming. Harry risked a glance at the prototype in Zaxmore's hands. Hairline fractures spider-webbed across its surface, pulsing with unstable light. His heart sank as he realized the truth. The device was seconds from catastrophic overload. If it detonated here, it would vaporize the research vessel, and the Komar rescue ship alongside it. He locked eyes with Karos across the lab, saw the same realization in the Komar's face. There was only one choice. "Karos, get Zaxmore and the others to the rescue ship," Harry shouted, unleashing another barrage at the advancing Kraxtar. "I'll hold them off." Karos hesitated for a split second, mandibles twitching. Then he nodded sharply. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten, my friend." The Komar warrior scooped up Dr. Zaxmore and sprinted for the lab's rear doors, the other researchers close behind. Harry laid down a blistering cover fire, plasma bolts stitching a deadly line across the lab. Kraxtar warriors fell, smouldering holes punched through their carapaces. But Kraxvol surged forward, energy crackling along his claws. Harry rolled desperately aside as the commander's talons ripped through the deck where he'd been standing a heartbeat before. He came up firing, bolt after bolt slamming into Kraxvol's armored thorax. The Kraxtar staggered, ichor leaking from cracked chitin, but kept coming. The blade hummed and spat as he parried Kraxvol's slashing claws, the stench of ozone and seared chitin filling the air. Harry's muscles burned with the effort of holding back the Kraxtar's monstrous strength, his boots skidding on the debris-strewn deck. A sharp pain lanced through his side as a lucky blow slipped past his guard, Kraxvol's talons ripping through his armor and into the flesh beneath. Harry stumbled, one hand clutching the bleeding wound. Kraxvol loomed over him, mandibles clacking in triumph. "Now you die, human," the Kraxtar snarled, raising his claws for the killing blow. "And the device will be ours." Harry looked past him, to the prototype lying on the deck where Zaxmor had dropped it. The crystalline lattice pulsed with blinding light, the air around it shimmering like a heat haze. With a roar of desperate defiance, Harry lunged forward under Kraxvol's descending claws. His fingers closed around the prototype, its surface searing his skin. He channeled every scrap of his will into the device, feeling the Zaxthar crystals resonating with his intent. A wave of scintillating energy exploded outwards, engulfing Kraxvol and his warriors. The Kraxtar shrieked as their weapons and armor shorted out, writhing in the crackling storm. Harry, at the heart of the maelstrom, staggered towards the lab's escape pods. Klaxons blared and red emergency lights flashed as the energy surge overloaded system after system. He could feel the research vessel shuddering around him, tearing itself apart. Kraxvol, his armor smoking and eyes blazing with rage, lurched after him. Harry half fell into an escape pod, slamming the hatch controls with a fist. The pod blasted free of the disintegrating ship, the force of the explosion hurling it tumbling away into the void. Through the pod's tiny viewport, Harry saw the research vessel erupt into a blinding fireball, the prototype's detonation ripping it apart from the inside out. The Komar rescue ship, a distant glimmer, was already accelerating away to safety. He let out a shuddering breath, slumping back into the pod's cramped seat. His vision blurred, exhaustion and pain crashing over him in a wave. He'd done it. He'd bought Karos and the others the time they needed. The Kraxtar had been denied their prize. As his eyes slid closed, Harry's last thought was of Earth, of blue skies and green grass, of home. Harry clung to consciousness as the escape pod tumbled through the void, his vision blurring from blood loss and exhaustion. Just as the darkness threatened to claim him, a familiar voice crackled over the pod's comm system. Harry, do you read me? This is the Komar ship Defiant. We have you on sensors. Prepare for retrieval." Relief washed over Harry as he felt the pod shudder, caught in the rescue ship's tractor beam. Moments later, the hatch hissed open, and he found himself looking up into the concerned face of Captain Zaxlar. "Easy there, Sergeant Reyes," the Komar captain said, helping Harry to his feet. "You've been through hell." As Harry stumbled out of the pod, he was engulfed in a fierce embrace. Karos clung to him, mandibles clicking with emotion. "I thought we'd lost you," the Komar warrior said, his voice rough. Harry returned the embrace, grinning through the pain. "Takes more than a few bugs to keep a Reyes down." In the medbay, as the ship's doctor tended to Harry's wounds, Karos filled him in on what had happened. The Defiant had arrived just in time to witness the destruction of the Zorgan research vessel, the Kraxtar ships scattering before the Komar's superior firepower. Dr. Zaxmor, heavily bandaged but alive, grasped Harry's hand. "I owe you my life, Sergeant Reyes," the elderly researcher said, his voice trembling, "and the lives of my team. Without you, the prototype would have been lost." As the Defiant made its way back to Komar space, news of Harry's actions spread like wildfire. Comms chattered with reports of the human who had saved the Komar research team and denied the Kraxtar a powerful new weapon. By the time they reached the Komar homeworld, Harry Reyes had become a household name. The Komar capital was a riot of color and sound. As the Defiant touched down, crowds of cheering Komar lining the streets. Harry, still leaning heavily on Karos for support, found himself swept up in a whirlwind of celebration. The Komar High Council, an assembly of elderly Komar in flowing robes, presented Harry and Karos with gleaming medals in a grand ceremony. "For bravery above and beyond," the Grand Councillor intoned, placing the medal around Harry's neck. "For forging bonds of friendship and unity between our peoples." Harry met Karos's eyes as the crowd roared its approval. In that moment, the hardships they had endured, the battles they had fought, it all seemed worth it. They had made a difference. They had brought their worlds closer together. But even as the cheers rang out, a new sound cut through the din. a sound that chilled Harry to his core, the shrill, undulating war cry of the Kraxtar. Carol stiffened beside him, mandibles flaring. "They've found us." Chaos erupted as Kraxtar dropships descended from the sky, disgorging waves of chittering warriors into the heart of the Komar capital. Plasma fire streaked through the air as the insectoid invaders clashed with the Komar defense forces. Harry and Karos leapt into action, snatching up weapons from fallen Komar soldiers. Side by side they fought, plasma rifles blazing, cutting a swath through the Kraxtar horde. Around them, the once peaceful streets ran green with insectoid ichor. But for every Kraxtar they felled, a dozen more surged forward. Harry saw Komar civilians cut down as they fled, saw buildings crumble under the onslaught. And there, in the midst of the carnage, a sight that made his blood run cold. Kraxavold, the Kraxtar commander, held the Zaxthar crystal prototype aloft, its surface pulsing with baleful light. At his feet, bound and bloodied, was Dr. Zaxmore and a group of Komar officials. "Surrender, mammals," Kraxvold chittered, "or your leaders will die." Harry and Karos exchanged a glance, a lifetime of understanding passing between them in an instant. They had no choice. They had to act. As the Kraxtar ship blasted free of the Komar homeworld, the prototype device secure in its hold, Harry and Karos were already in motion. They raced for the Defiant, ignoring the startled cries of the Komar crew. "Get this bucket in the air," Harry roared as they leapt aboard. "We've got a job to do." The Defiant surged after the fleeing Kraxtar vessel, its engines straining. In the cramped confines of the ship's armory, Harry and Karos prepped for battle. "We do this quick and quiet," Harry said as he checked the charge on his plasma rifle. "In and out before they know what hit them." Karos nodded, slipping a bandolier of grenades over his shoulder. "For Zaxthar, for the Komar, for us." The Defiant shuddered as it latched onto the Kraxtar ship, cutting through its hull with a searing beam of energy. Harry and Karos were the first ones through the breach, weapons spitting fire. They fought their way through the ship's twisting corridors, a two-warrior army against a legion of Kraxtar. Every corner they turned, every door they breached, brought them closer to their goal. They found the captives in the ship's hold, huddled and afraid but alive. Dr. Zaxmore's eyes widened as Harry cut through his bonds. "Sergeant Reyes, how—" "No time, Doc," Harry said, pressing a spare blaster into the researcher's hands. "We've got to move." They were almost to the breach, the captives stumbling between them, when Kraxavold burst from a side passage. The Kraxtar commander's eyes blazed with hate, the prototype device clutched in his claws. "You!" he snarled, leveling the device at Harry. "You've ruined everything!" Harry dove to the side as a bolt of scintillating energy scorched the bulkhead where he'd been standing. He rolled to his feet, rifle raised, but Kraxavold was already moving, scuttling towards him with murderous intent. They clashed in a flurry of strikes, rifle against energy-wreathed claws. Harry ducked and wove, the stench of scorched chitin filling his nostrils. He could feel his strength flagging, his wounds screaming in protest. Suddenly Karos was there, vibroblade flashing. The Komar warrior hurled himself at Kraxvold with a roar, driving the blade deep into the Kraxtar's thorax. Kraxvold screeched in agony, lashing out with the prototype device. The blast caught Karos square in the chest, hurling him across the hold. "Karos!" Harry screamed, surging forward. He snatched up Karos's fallen blade and lunged at Kraxavold, a cry of pure fury tearing from his throat. The blade sheared through the prototype device, through Kraxavold's claws, through chitin and flesh and bone. Kraxavold fell, cleaved nearly in half. The prototype device tumbled from his grip, shattered and sparking. Harry kicked it aside and raced to Karos's side. The Komar warrior lay still, a blackened hole smoking in his chest. Harry gathered him into his arms, heedless of the tears streaming down his face. "Stay with me, buddy," he pleaded. "Stay with me. We did it. We won." But Karos's eyes were already dimming, his breaths coming shallow and fast. With a trembling claw he reached up and touched Harry's face. Then he was gone, his body going limp in Harry's arms. Harry threw back his head and howled, a wordless cry of grief and rage that echoed through the ship. The journey back to the Komar homeworld passed in a blur of pain and sorrow. Harry barely remembered the accolades heaped upon him, the solemn ceremonies in honor of the fallen. All he could think of was Karos, the friend who had fought beside him, who had saved him, who had died for him. In the weeks that followed, as the Komar and the United Earth Federation forged a new alliance, Harry threw himself into his work. He became a diplomat, a peacemaker, a bridge between worlds. It was what Karos would have wanted, he told himself, a way to honor his memory. But the pain never really went away. The hole in his heart where his friend had been, he carried it with him, a constant ache, as he worked to build a better future. There were moments, though, when the grief eased, moments when he would look up at the stars and remember the battles they had fought, the laughs they had shared, remember a bond forged in blood and fire, unbreakable even in death. In those moments, Harry Reyes knew that Karos was still with him, that he always would be, and he would keep fighting, keep building, keep hoping, for both of them. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.